Hey, how's it going? Sorry that I am late.
Sorry that I am late.
Alright, let's mute that.
Sorry that.
Alright, let's see who's all in here. Me plus 3 others. Well, I did just see a comment, but I don't know where it went. Trying to... There it goes. Fenn Treasure Hunters. Oh, I didn't realize that there was an S on the other end of that. That's cool though. Happy for you. Dak. Is that pronounced Dak? I don't know if I ever seen you in my my videos before, but it's been a while since I made a live video, so S needs to come off. Hopefully that's just picking. Alright, so this, I'm gonna wait just a little bit. Oh, really? Wow. Damn, I'm sorry to hear that. Is that because, you think that's because of the, you going to Fort Riley thing? So all the people that didn't like me dipping when I made my videos, so I quit dipping and I quit smoking. Unfortunately, you're going to have to deal with me vaping now on my channel. So, how many people we got in here? We got 8. All right, I kind of just talked to you guys just here for a second, and then long story, it's all my fault. Alright, Goldilocks, how's it going? Russ Keller. Hopefully that's my last video that you're talking about, and if so, I appreciate it. So, the trend that I've been seeing is there's a lot of newer people that have been commenting on the YouTube channels. So, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's a good thing because obviously, you know, more people are paying attention to the chase, but it's also a bad thing because more people are getting involved in the chase. So, I definitely remember what it was like as a new searcher. So, I tried to watch anything I could get my hands on. So yeah, looks like we have 8 people in here right now. I wanted to wait a little bit longer to get more people in here, but considering what this topic is going to be about, I think it's going to be a pretty lengthy video, and I don't even necessarily know if it'll be all in one shot. I think that's why, you know, my views are the amount that they are, is just because I tend to make longer videos and people really don't feel like listening for an hour, 2 hours, so on and so forth. So, you know, part of me is like, you know, do I cut down the videos, make them shorter so more people watch, or do I just say, screw it, I'm happy with the people that actually do show up? So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, so this video, and I know a Gypsy's Kiss also did a series on this video. I didn't get to watch all of theirs, but from what I did watch, I'm gonna take a different approach to it. I feel like they had a lot of like other sideline stuff going on with their analysis. So pretty much, I'm going to go through a war for me, and I'm going to be pointing out all the hidden context, or what I think a certain phrase, what it means. And I've been rereading the book, and I've been noticing a lot of stuff. Obviously, you guys that watch my videos, you know that, I'll come up with, what I think the actual literature is saying. Some people agree with it. Some people are like, holy crap, I never would have caught it. And other people are like, hey, you're crazy. But that's kind of what books tend to do to people. Like for all poetry, there is, people are going to come up with different meanings. Same thing for books, you name it, people are going to interpret it the way that they want to interpret it. And I think that Fenn was very careful when he wrote his book and his poem, because he doesn't want it to be debatable about the interpretation. Obviously, if you leave a poem so vague as to the point where it could be 1,000 different meanings, then nobody's ever going to find it. So he wants it to be read a certain way. So to answer the question the other night, I think it was on A Gypsy's Kiss actually, they started it off with saying, do you think that the book is required? And I absolutely think that the book is required. And the subtle hints that Fenn gives, I think the subtle hints are getting to know Fenn. All right, so I'm going to read you guys something just really quick. Bear with me real quick. If I can even find it. Might have to look it up on my phone that I just so happen to be on right now. Not meanings, we're looking at messages. Okay. So I'm gonna read this to you guys real quick. So I feel like it would be fair use because it is a public website, but I'll give the credit to WikiHow and whoever had written this article. I'm not sure who it was, but how to find deeper meaning in literature. All right, opening your mind and changing your perception towards the world, or maybe getting good grades on your advanced English course, whatever the reason, defining deeper literary meanings is a great skill. What makes a piece of literature remembered for centuries is typically something more than just words. Often, it is the deeper meaning tangled skillfully in those classy words. But these are difficult to interpret. However, this article will highlight upon the essentials of meaning interpretation in literature. All right, so part 1, before reading. Understand why authors weave deeper meanings into stories. Authors often present deeper meanings in subtle ways, leaving the reader to have to really think about the story to discover the full meaning of the story. This is not done to be annoying. It's done to let the reader follow the story and use their own imagination and intellect, which Fenn has said is important. So the readers may feel connected to the plot. This is not only in books, but in movies, music, and some television as well. And not just classics, but in current media. This also happens throughout literature, from simple fairy tales to long adult novels. Meaning is all around the same way literature is. So how do authors present deeper meaning? Authors usually are subtle in how they do this, which Fenn said there are also subtle hints sprinkled throughout the book. But there are some typical ways. All right, first one, symbolism. An object, person, character, or idea in a book has a deeper meaning. For example, in the Chronicles of Narnia, Aslan the lion is a figure representing Jesus Christ. Using symbolism helps readers look up at the word in a new way. Now that's literature's beauty, isn't it? All right, the protagonist's journey. The protagonist of the book undergoes a trial and transformation. Harry Potter, for instance, grows as an individual throughout his adventures. And I think Fenn hints towards this a little bit too, because he says, making plans is antagonistic to freedom. Well, for there to be something antagonistic, there's got to be something protagonist, And then commentary. Often in a science fiction or fantasy world, the author presents a world that comments on ours. For example, The Hunger Games looks at high stakes testing for children in a world which privileged class is the one that really benefits. Alright, so the next thing, number 2, do a little research. Before beginning, try to find a context in which you can place the book. Whether it's, and it doesn't, this is talking about books, but it doesn't matter. Books, poetry, music, it's more tailored towards books, but pretty much all literature, or anything that derives from literature. Alright, so before beginning, try to find a context in which you can place the book, whether it's in the 1600s, the 1800s, or 200 BC. Do some research on the culture and current events of the time as well. So for Fenn, we know that it was, for the most part, it was 1930s, 1940s. Maybe you can discount the 1930s a little bit and focus more on, from 1940 to 1970. But either way, we had the Great Depression going on. We had poverty out the ass. We had war all over the world. It's so that might be able to help us out a little bit. Okay, right here. Geography matters. You have to know a little bit about geography. Remember, as Fenn says, the world can be very different in technology, culture, and so on from the region of one world to another. What is true in 1940s Japan is not necessarily so in 2015. So we've evolved since then. It was this type of world then, it's this type of world now. Alright, understand race, gender, and ethnicity in your time period. It may be difficult to understand why characters act the way they do if you do not know how factors such as these play out in a novel's settings. For example, a woman in the 1960s would not report sexual harassment in a company. Things such as a boss saying overly sexual things to a secretary would not be unusual and often was expected. So that's the same thing that I had talked about in the affair video. Like a woman back then would not leave their husband. The husband probably could have gotten away with doing darn near anything, and the woman just wouldn't leave the husband. So that's kind of confirming the same thing right here. And then it says a homosexual person only 30 years ago would likely be labeled mentally ill, and now it's like it's beyond acceptable. So also, and this might be a little bit important, a little knowledge of the Jazz Age is essential to understanding The Great Gatsby, for instance. The Depression in America has to be understood to understand a story set in the 1930s. So, we have F. Scott Fitzgerald, okay, was highly influenced about the Jazz Age. That's what he's referred to as the Jazz Age. And in order to understand the Jazz Age, we also have to understand the Depression. And by understanding those types of things, we can really reflect on how life was in the 1930s and 40s, just like the time period that Fenn was talking about. So this one little sentence right here is almost confirming Fenn's book and stuff that's talked about in Fenn's book. Oh. Alright, stand by for just a second, everybody. No, I'm just going to ignore it. I don't know who it was. I'll get back to him whenever I get a chance. Now I need to make sure I'm still recording. Am I still recording? Yep, looks like I am. Alright, what's going on here? Okay, cool. Alright, so I'm going to read that one more time. A little knowledge of the Jazz Age is essential to understanding The Great Gatsby, which Fenn talks about. For instance, understand The Great Gatsby, for instance. The Depression in America has to be understood to understand a story set in the 1930s. Alright, then it says, do some research on the author. Learning about the author helps shed some light on his or her worldview. While the writing of an author often echoes the writer's truth, knowing his or her biography will help make it clear. Typically, a quick Wikipedia search will turn up a lot of information. I'd say right about now we know a lot about Fenn. However, I'm also going to say that I have a feeling we don't know much about Fenn. Because remember, it's not who you are, it's who they think you are. So if Fenn is convincing us that he's somebody that he's not, then anything that we're going to find on Wikipedia, on the forums, the questions that he's answered, it might not necessarily be the true Fenn, but just the one that we think he is. It maybe in order to find the true Fenn, we have to find the deeper meanings in the book in order to find the truths. All right. All right. For example, learning that J.R.R. Tolkien served in the armed forces in World War I will shed some light on how he understood the horrors of war, such as William Shakespeare's life is unknown, or much of William Shakespeare's life is unknown. However, we do know he lived in an age where both Christianity and magic, such as ghosts and magic spells, were accepted realities. His writings reflect this. All right, I'm going to stop reading the little sub things unless I see something important. I'm going to read at, the main bulk of it so I can get started on this. All right, the next thing is mature. That's what you have to do. Mature. Understanding the deeper meaning of literature through higher thought, or understanding the deeper meaning of literature through higher thought processes, such as symbolism, requires a certain amount of brain development. This does not typically occur until the age of 12 or so. While younger readers can and do make connections, this higher level of thinking is typically not consistent until junior high or high school. I'm going to go back and I'm going to read something real quick right at the beginning of the book. Okay. Where is it at? Okay. My only goal in this endeavor is to talk about a few of my life experiences, and if any readers over the age of 12 don't see a little of themselves in this mirror, then maybe they deserve another term. Meaning that they never matured and they are never able to get the deeper meanings that are in this book, which is being confirmed by this when it says, understanding the deeper meaning of literature through higher thought processes such as symbolism requires a certain amount of brain development. This does not typically occur until age 12 or so. Okay? All right, moving on. All right, while reading, this is the second part of what we have to do. Look at the first sentence, or sentences. Not always, but most often, the first sentence is crucial in understanding the story. Take a look at these two introductions, for instance. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. Gives an entirely different impression than mother died today. Think about a few things when you are examining the first sentence. How does this statement make you feel? What sort of person must be saying this? What kind of mood does it evoke? All right, the second thing, know any strong responses you have. If something in the book disgusts you, it was probably intended to do so. Take a look at your emotional responses, if you have any. Were you offended by something in the book? Why might the author have included that? Are they criticizing someone? Are they criticizing society's attitude towards the thing? Next, pay attention to what seems strange, unexpected, or otherwise off to you. Why would you insult someone while proposing marriage to them? Why would a church, which should be pristine, be described as grimy? Why is the ugly hunchback the one with the most deep statements? Often, when the author challenges expectations, they mean to draw attention to something. They might be foreshadowing or taking a close look at what society has already been labeled. So, read the poem as a memoir first. Read the book as a memoir first. Then go back and read the poem over and over and over. Then go back and read the book and look for anything that stands out to you. Anything that stands out to us might be anything that might disgust us. And he says, it might be anything that, kind of like, puts a bad taste in our mouth or something that seems off. Like, hey, that didn't make sense, or, that's not how it's expected to be, right? And I'm going to confirm that with this right here. All right, and please don't fret too much if some of the things that and please don't fret too much if some of the things I say don't appeal to you. Instead, keep in mind that the temperament of the country was different in the 1930s when I was a tyke and wimpy hamburgers were a nickel. If it will bother you to read that I shot meadowlarks so my family could have food on the table, then please don't read further. He's telling you to stop at those spots that bother you. I did that more than once, and candor demands that I admit to being as proud of it today as my father was of me then when I was 8. Please overlook my slight penchant for provocation and realize that all of us are environmentalists to some degree, and me more than most. He's saying, please overlook. He's not saying, like, just look past. He's telling you to look over. Look over that stuff that is where he's, where he's showing his slight penchant for provocation. All right. I'm almost done, I promise. Alright, look at the symbolism. Using symbols, authors often get messages across to give a deeper message than is seen at the surface. These are typically along themes such as good versus evil, nature versus mankind, maturing into adulthood, or the like. I think Fenn's book covers all of that. Not everything in a piece of writing is necessarily a symbol. Sometimes a dog is white because the author had a childhood dog that was white. All right, symbols are different from culture to culture. For example, in much of Europe, bats are traditionally considered evil beings of the night, while in China they are considered good luck. All right, and number 5, names are important. Authors are often, although not always, very significant. Authors are often very significant. Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, freaking Osborne Russell, John Charles Fremont, the list goes on. Example, in The Great Gatsby, the name Daisy, okay, so they're referring to it in a different way. A name that is also symbolism is how they're saying it. Example, in The Great Gatsby, the name Daisy signifies apparent purity. White petals hiding a corrupted heart. Center of the flowers is yellow. All right. In the Harry Potter series, J.K. Rowling often makes names important. Sirius Black's name indicates his dark canine nature. The star, which is Sirius, is nicknamed the Dog Star. All right. All right. Number 6, look for themes. Are certain words, ideas, or imagery coming up repeatedly? And number 7, piece the clues together. Once you've read through a piece of literature, look at all the things you noted and try to see how they might fit together to create a deeper meaning. Then you can try to match what you've come up with to the author's own life story and see if they parallel somehow. Take your time. There are really no wrong answers, so as long as you can reinforce your conclusion with details from the work. There are wrong answers in this case, unfortunately. It's not like we don't just get to find the meaning that works for us. We need to find the no shit meaning in order to figure out how to find the treasure. It is okay if you cannot do this yourself, as that is what book discussion and good literature moderator is for. Hey, that's what we're doing. All right, even expert readers do not always pick up on everything. This often takes practice, especially if you're just starting out. As you get more experience, you will likely be able to pick up on things more quickly. All right, so with that being said, all right, so why is this still? I hope I'm still freaking recording. It keeps shutting off on me. Okay, so I'm already, 25 minutes into the video, and I haven't even gotten to what I want to go. But, I would love to hear what you guys' thoughts are about what I just read. Is the book important? Is the book needed? Is there hidden meanings in the book? Or am I just batshit crazy on all the stuff that I have, that I've hinted towards? All right, and speaking of hinting towards stuff, I'm going to get started on the book now. Arafeki, I hope you're the last person that wrote, because my browser keeps shutting down and I don't know if I'm recording. Okay. Alright. Starting out, a war for me. Okay, so my intent behind this is to read it read something. When I see something, I'm going to freaking, just pick it apart. All right. So starting out at a war for me, if you have the book, feel free to follow along or whatever. Maybe you'll catch something that I didn't see, or so on and so forth. All right, the Korean War had started 3 months earlier, so I joined the Air Force as a private and was sent to radar mechanic school in Biloxi. The big, ugly sergeant gave me purpose for the first time in my life, and it wasn't very funny. For the first time in life, he had somebody that would not deal with his shenanigans. Like, he got away with pulling stuff over on his teacher and, faking it through, elementary school, middle school, high school, even college. He managed to cheat college for 5 days to 7 days or whatever. And he knew how to smooth talk himself out of stuff, right? Up until he met this big, ugly sergeant that finally gave him purpose. Big ugly sergeant gave me purpose for the first time in my life, and it wasn't very funny. He didn't enjoy it. Sometimes just lasting something out can be a triumph. So he was proud of himself, or at least was trying to have a victory over this situation by not quitting. To get away, I volunteered for everything I could find in the manuals. Fortunately, they needed pilots, and I was accepted into training. So anyway, he could figure out how to get out of there without quitting. That's what he tried to do. The problem was that I was in love with the most beautiful girl you could find anywhere. Peggy Jean Proctor was her name, and we had been dating for a few years. She was in Houston going to college, and I was traveling all over the countryside trying to learn to fly airplanes. Everyone knew that she was too good for me, but tenacity was never one of my shortcomings, if you know what I mean. Alright, so if you know what I mean, there's a reason why he says if you know what I mean, and that's because tenacity is not the right word to use there. Maybe instead of tenacity, he should have used persistent. So tenacity doesn't fit the spot, but that's why he said, do you know what I mean? Later on in an interview, he spoke about this specifically, and he says, that word tenacity, if the reader knows what I'm saying, why do I have to use the right words? So if us as the readers know what he's saying, why does it matter what's in black and white or instead of what's in between the lines? And Ernest Hemingway was super famous for this, and I think that's why he brings it up. That's why he talks about Hemingway. It's because Hemingway knew how to freaking hide stuff within the context, within the words, but without actually writing it out. Graduation from pilot training was in September, and we were married after she got her degree 3 months later. I had plush assignments, and my wife was always by my side. So he had it pretty good with the areas that they lived at. Maybe I'm taking plush out of context, so just to be sure, I'm going to look it up. A rich fabric of silk, cotton, wool, or combination of these things, or richly luxurious and expensive. So he lived pretty good. All right. In my first fighter squadron, I flew the F-86 Delta, which held the world speed record at the time. Then, as a general's aide, I flew most of the later fighters. And even went to helicopter school. In Germany, my squadron flew the F-100 Charlie, and I sat alert with an atomic bomb under my wing. The world was tense, but for us, life was good, and our first daughter was born. So he's living in these luxurious places. The world is falling apart around him, and he's flying aircrafts with atomic bombs strapped to it. And he's alert. He's ready for anything. So he has it made. He's living a life of luxury for the most part. He's got a good job, and he can defeat any enemy within a matter of a push of a button on his aircraft, and the world is tense. Like, that's gonna like that's going to help anything, and I'm not saying it to be negative, because he talks about it a lot in here, especially in this chapter. It's like I feel like he knew that he contributed to the tenseness of the world at the time. All right. All right. After a few years, an unfortunate conflict started in Southeast Asia, and I was separated from my wife and two beautiful young daughters for a year. I was reminded of what my dear friend and Texas Patriot historian Yvette Haley said of his wife Nita. It is so beautiful and fitting that only my lack of eloquence and articulacy could have prevented the words from also being mine. If Yvette's were here, surely he would allow me the fantasy pleasure of addressing them to my wife as well. If Yvette's were here, surely he would allow me the fantasy pleasures of addressing them to my wife as well. So, is that saying that he's only addressing this to us in the book and never felt comfortable with addressing it to his wife because Yvette's, the person that made it up, wasn't here? Or is he saying that he would want Yvette's to say it to his wife? But courage wears a crimson coat trimmed in tapings bold. Knowledge dons a dress of note, fame's cloth is gold. Far they range and fair they roam, much they do and dare, while gray-gowned patience sits at home and weaves the clothes they wear. So, gray-gowned patience, gosh darn it. All right. Gray-gowned patience sitting at home, that's the spouses. That's the military wives, right? And weaves the clothes they wear. All right, so going back to the beginning, courage wears a crimson coat. All right, so crimson is like if I'm not mistaken, it's like a blood color. But I'm not sure what crimson coat means. I'm so sorry if you hear this all. People blowing up my phone. Crimson. Alright, you're gonna have to give me a second because I can't listen to this anymore. Freaking hate. Alright. Can you guys see now? Am I back on? Alright. I think I'm back on. That is so annoying. I'm so sorry that I had to leave. So yeah. Crimson meaning. Can somebody let me know if I'm back on? Okay. All right. So yeah, just like I said, crimson is a deep, rich red color inclining towards purple. So, trimmed in trappings bold, knowledge dons a dress of note, fame's cloth is gold. So it sounds like, the soldiers freaking, wear these clothes made in blood, while the rich sit at home far away from the battlefield and roam free. Okay? Much they do and dare, while gray-gowned patience sits at home and weaves the cloth they wear. Alright, I'm going to say that one more time. So, courage wears a crimson coat, trimmed in trappings bold. Knowledge dons a dress of note, fame's cloth is gold. Far they range and fair they roam, much they do and dare, while gray-gowned patience sits at home and weaves the cloth they wear. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like he's talking about courage, knowledge, and fame, but all of them are applying to different categories of people. I don't know. Poetry's never really been my thing, but I've also never really gotten into it. So what follows is something I did write. Its sudden arrival on paper should not be confused with how long it took to get there. Some stories must move at their own pace and in their own time. This is one of them. All right, so this is super important. All right, what follows is something I did right. Its sudden arrival on paper should not be confused with how long it took to get there. All right, so just because it's on paper now doesn't mean that it's not something that has been in the works for forever. Not like he had written this prior to, like, hey, you know, I worked on this section of the book for, you know, 2 years, 10 years, whatever. That's not what he's saying. And he confirms that with saying some stories have to move at their own pace and in their own time. So it's here on paper and it's been in the works for a long time, but it wasn't previously written. But instead, he's talking about he had to go through serious life changes, right? From the start of this all the way until the time that he wrote the book. That's the length of time that it was taking to draft it and to create the story. And only at that point in time was he able to freaking type it up and get the whole thing on paper. All right. So, continuing on. Let me hit my vape real quick. All right. When the Vietnam War came along, I found myself a fighter pilot major in the Air Force. All the frailties of humankind had manifested themselves in that beautiful place, in that terrible situation. All right, so a frailty is flaws in character or morale. Flaws or weaknesses in character or morale, okay? Okay. How do I want? Okay. Yeah, brought out weaknesses in characters or morals. Okay, so he's saying all the frailties of humankind had manifested themselves in that beautiful place, in that terrible situation. So this beautiful place, along with this terrible situation, brought out weaknesses and questionable character and morals in the people that were there. Please go. All right. That place brought out the worst in people, is what he's saying. All right. This next part's really good. Lyndon Johnson had summed it up under the heading of saving South Vietnam from all Southeast Asia from communist aggression. End quote. I bought into that pretty good. All the pilots did. The endless hours of classroom training and sorties flown on the gunnery ranges around the world had bred us to it. It was almost umbilical. And I'm going to say why that's important right now, okay? I bought into that pretty good, right? So in order to buy into something, somebody has to sell you into something, right? They have to feed you a line of bullshit, pretty much. And for you to buy into it means, you know, you were conned, you were lied to, you were brainwashed, you were programmed. All right, I'm leaning more towards the brainwashed and programmed and conned because he confirms it in the next sentence. I bought into that pretty good. All the pilots did. Like, hey, it wasn't just me, but it was them too. But I'm going to let you know why. The endless hours of classroom training and sorties flown on the gunnery ranges around the world had bred us to it. Okay, so if it wasn't for the endless hours of classroom training, the field training exercises, the flight exercises, you know, the gunnery ranges, and all the propaganda that they had been fed into, it wouldn't have worked. He wouldn't have bought into it. And he confirms that right here by saying it was almost umbilical. Okay, so umbilical is, I'm going to let you know, umbilical. Heavily dependent in a close relationship, serving as or containing a conduit through which power is transferred, especially to a unit that is designed to be self-sufficient or independent, like, I don't know, the military. So it was umbilical or heavily dependent that the endless hours of training and classroom hours were conducted in order to get the military to buy into saving South Vietnam and all Southeast Asia from communist aggression. So he's pretty much confirming, like, I was duped, you know? After all of the bullets and rockets and bombs, had bred us to it, it was almost umbilical. How faint it seems to me now, and how dreadful it still must be for so many others. So how faint must be, how faint it seems to me now. So faint is like almost not perceivable. You know, whether it's by memory or sound or sight or touch or whatever, it's faint. But I'm assuming he's talking more about a memory, okay? How faint it seems to me now, and how dreadful it still must be for so many others. So even though he's kind of put it behind him, forgotten about it, maybe, you know, it was a long time ago for him, you know, but dreadful for others, you know, he's making mentions towards, you know, towards PTSD or, you know, shell shock or, you know, combat stress for the soldiers, but also for, you know, the families that are still alive and dealt with fatalities. You know, just like we have wives on our side, some of those Viet Cong probably also had wives, right? Or not even necessarily, shooting the bad guys doesn't matter, but the innocent people that happen to be around, you know, they had parents, they had children, they had brothers, they had sisters, they had wives, they had husbands, and that's also why he's saying must be dreadful for so many more. All right. After all of the bullets and rockets and bombs had finished flying through the trees and across the skies, there was nothing left for us but the memory of 58,266 Americans whose names have been etched chronologically by the time of death on that shiny black war memorial, which is constantly being washed clean by the tears of a million visitors. In another generation or so, most of those names will be but an asterisk in the history of a forgotten war, a curiosity to wonder about, like the Lincoln Memorial. So, there was nothing left of us. At the end of the war, there was nothing to show for it. So at the end of the war, there was nothing to show for it except for 58,266 people that have been carved onto a wall that gets washed daily by the people that come to visit it and the tears that they've shed, right? These are patriotic people, the people that, you know, actually feel like, you know, giving recognition to these, you know, to these KIAs. But then he says, in another generation or so, most of those names will be but an asterisk of history of a forgotten war. What does that mean? So today, walking around, right? Walking around today, we see people, and, you know, Fenn's one of them, but we see people that were involved in the Vietnam conflict. You know, they wear their hats, Vietnam veteran, they have Vietnam plates. We still talk about Vietnam like it wasn't that long ago, but realistically it was a decent time ago. And, but in another generation, it's going to be completely forgotten about. The only thing that's going to show for it, the only way that people are going to even acknowledge that it happened was by the gigantic memorial that was that would be hard to remove, right? Kind of just like how we feel about the Civil War. We weren't around. We don't know any Civil War veterans. We don't know much about it. We weren't around when it happened or immediately after it happened. All we know is, you know, what was put out in memorials and freaking, you know, journal entries and freaking military logs, you know, that type of stuff, and what we learn in school. So pretty soon, in another generation, that's all that's going to be remembered from the Vietnam, right? And I'm sure a couple generations after that, we will probably end up doing stuff like ripping down the Vietnam Memorial, ripping down any statues or whatever, you know, once it comes to a point where, you know, the world is a, you know, like a one world instead of all these different sects. And then these you know, the Vietnamese were offended by it, so we start ripping down the statues, we start changing the history, we start doing all that stuff. So that's the way that I read it. I mean, I kind of went on a little side rant right there, but it's very accurate what he's saying. How unfortunate is it that world leaders are constantly bringing war and death to those of us who are doomed to follow their dictates? Meaning, the politicians enforce the policy and declare the wars, but they're not the ones out there fighting. The people that volunteered to want to help their country, they're the ones that are being fed the lines of BS through all the endless classroom hours and all the freaking training exercises, and they buy into it, and then they get told that they're going to go to war, and they think that they're doing a good thing. They think that they're doing a good thing only to realize maybe later on in life, like, the war didn't make any sense, okay? And the people that sent them there were actually the politicians, right? They're not fighting the wars. Their sons aren't fighting the wars. Their family members aren't fighting the wars. The people that they could give a damn about are the ones that are fighting the wars for, you know, plush living assignments, which isn't true, and freaking unfair pay and everything else, while they're making, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to sit at their desk. Later elected officials will ask the same question and give the same answer. Why? And never again. Of course they don't know why, and there will always be another again. Almost 2,500 years ago, Plato said that only the dead will know the end of war, meaning you can't escape war until you're dead. It's always going to be there. It's going to constantly happen and happen and happen. Okay, I didn't pay much of a price in Vietnam, and I feel a little guilty for that. Perhaps I was spared to tell a tranquil story that unfolded upon me without a scar or even a bad dream, but has provided profundity of emotions that still dwell deep and resonate inside of me, almost like a missed heartbeat. Okay, I didn't pay much of a price in Vietnam, and I feel a little guilty for that. He's saying, you know, out of all the missions that he had done, out of all the bombs that he had dropped, out of all the people that may have died as a result of it, out of all of his friends that were probably killed in the war, and you know, the soldiers before and after him, okay, he didn't pay a price, and he felt guilty about it, right? Like, kind of like, if you could wish that you could take somebody's place, you know, that's how he's looking at it. But he's also saying, maybe I was spared to tell this tranquil story about something that unfolded in my life without even a scar or scratch or anything or even a bad dream. He's saying he escaped Vietnam without a scar, without broken limbs, without even bad dreams. And maybe I can tell this tranquil story. There's a reason why he's saying it and why he's saying it that way. I don't really want to dwell into that because it would probably be a little messed up from one veteran to another, but I know exactly what he means. Okay, a profundity of emotions that will still dwell deep and resonate inside of me, almost like a missed heartbeat. So, missed heartbeat. Okay, while we're on that, I'm going to tell you guys something. Okay. Let me click on this real quick. And right about here. Gosh darn it. You know what? I think I wrote it down anyways. It's going to be important. Okay, thrill, right? The thrill of the chase. Thrill is an abnormal tremor or vibration in the respiratory or vascular system. So he's confirming that right there by letting you know in that sentence. Profundity of emotions that still dwell deep and resonate inside of me, almost like a missed heartbeat. And I'm coming to that. Okay? So you have the missed heartbeat part, okay? And then you have profundity. Okay, so I'm going to give you another definition of thrill. A feeling of great excitement and pleasure. Okay, a feeling of extreme excitement, usually caused by something pleasant. Now let's look up profundity. And that's the thing, like when you're reading this stuff, if you see words that you don't know and you're not going to look it up, you're not going to see the deeper meanings that's in the book. And I might be misinterpreting meanings here and there, but and I just made a video about not like people stop sounding like a know-it-all, but I feel like I'm pretty spot on this chapter and a lot of other stuff in the book. But that's because like I'm really digging in and looking at it and seeing what's all there. And that's kind of what you have to do. If you see a word that you don't recognize, you need to look it up, and then you need to see the context that it's within. All right, but profundity, an intellectual depth, something profound or abstruse, or the quality or state of being profound or deep. So he's saying that has provided me a intellectual depth of emotions that still dwell deep and resonate inside of me, almost like a thrill. Okay. And then he says, and I'm coming to that. So I'm coming to that as letting you know. He's about to let you know what the thrill is. Okay. That's another thing you got to ask yourself, right? So what's the title of the book? The thrill of the chase. Okay, meaning that we're seeking something, right? Or we're excited because we're chasing after something. But then you have to go back and you read all these chapters, and you really have to ask yourself, how does the thrill of the chase apply to the chapter that I'm reading? And you really have to find the context of what the thrill of the chase actually means for him. And you have to find it in the way that it was used in order to interpret what has been said in the poem, in my opinion. Okay, many professional soldiers... God damn, man, my freaking phone's still blowing up. Hopefully every time it comes through, my voice isn't cutting out. Alright. Many professional soldiers who have been in the throes of life or death experiences may be forever branded by an incident, although it may have only lasted a minute or two. Meaning, something that happened that only lasted a minute or two could freaking screw you over psychologically for so long. But it could also be for the better. It might not screw you over psychologically. It might have made you open your eyes and really see things for the first time, or maybe look at things in a different outlook. All right. Later in one's reverie, those memories can come sparking back when ignited by something innocently said or something thought. If you see a warrior staring off, quietly move away. So something that's said, or something that happens, or something can trigger this branding in the mind. And he's saying, or even a thought, right? And when it happens, you go to this place, and you're just thinking about it. You're zoned out and you're thinking about it, right? And you, as a person, happen to see a warrior staring off, you need to recognize that they are in that place and just move away. Wait for the thought to pass, right? So it is with me now, as I sit here past midnight, alone with only myself to know. So it is with me now, as I sit here past midnight, alone with only myself to know. He's saying that he's having this branding right now. This forever branded by an incident, right? So the same zone out, staring off type thing that he's talking about, he's going through it right now, or when he was writing a book. He says, so it is with me now, as I sit here past midnight, alone with only myself to know. Okay? And just for the hell of it, we are going to look up this. Alright, so. Definition of so. In a manner or way indicated or suggested. So the paragraph right up above it, he's suggesting, or he said it, and the line where he says, so it is with me now, he's referencing the thing that was just said. And don't forget what I said earlier at the beginning of this, right here. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. Okay, look at the first sentence. Not always. Oh no, what happened? Whoops. Okay. Not always, but most often, the first sentence is crucial in understanding the story. Take a look at these two introductions. For instance, it was best of times, it was the worst of times, so on and so forth. So he starts off with something, he follows into it, but if you're not reading closely, you kind of lose track of what he stated, and you're reading something else. So somebody might be reading this, and so it is with me now as I sit here past midnight, alone with only myself to know. They just think, oh, he's sitting by himself past midnight, right? But they're not realizing that he's in that place that he just talked about. There's a warrior staring off, and if anybody was around, they should probably quietly move away. I remember how it was in Tahoe on the South China Sea in South Vietnam. Everyone was nervous on their first mission into dangerous air, and I was no exception. But this was somehow different. I had flown 326 combat missions and had been shot down once already. This mission was scheduled to be my last because my year was almost up. The Freedom plane was to take me home in just 4 days on the 24th of December, 1968. So the Freedom plane is the thing that's bringing everybody back from deployment. Some weeks earlier, our F-100 single-seat fighters had flown 8 ship sorties into North Vietnam, where the dangerous air lived in great abundance. The dangerous air meaning like people have gone down. There's anti-aerial aircraft weaponry. Anti-aircraft weaponry. I could feel it beckoning me. I could feel it beckoning me to come and see, and I embraced the thought. He's enticed by the possibility. It's calling to him. You know, those dangerous airs are calling to him. He can hear it. He knows that it's dangerous, but he embraces the thought, and he hears the calling, and he's like, fuck it. Like, I'm ready to go. Alright, Air Force F-105 fighters from Karat, Udorn, and Ubon, Thailand, had flown hundreds of missions in the north, and those pilots were all heroes to me. Maybe that's why he embraced it. He looked up to those pilots, and he's like, I'm a pretty good pilot. Like, I think I could pull that off, and then maybe people will look up to me, so I'm not forgotten. The F-100 Misty Forward Air Controllers flying out of Phu Cat, South Vietnam, were just as brave, and the Hanoi Hilton was full of them. So there's F-100 Misty Forward Air Controllers flying. So there's professional soldiers all around him. And nobody denied anything. Like they knew through endless classroom hours and lots of gunnery ranges that we had to defeat aggression in South Vietnam, and they knew that they had to do whatever they had to do to accomplish that. So nobody turned down anything. Even though they know, like, hey, my other freaking battle buddy, whatever, just got shot down the other day, but it's almost like a bragging right to be able to say, like, I went out in the most dangerous air. But even if I wanted to turn it down, I couldn't, because I'm being told to do this by somebody that could end my career and so on and so forth. Our operations officer was relaxed and cavalier in his briefing. Don't worry about the friendlies. There aren't any up there. Pick targets of opportunity on the way back if you have Mike bullets left. But don't make a second pass. Keep your airspeed up. If you get in trouble, go for the water, squawking Mayday. If you guys are seasoned in the soil, and I'm not worried. Yeah, right. He wasn't going. Meaning, like, bro, stop bullshitting me. Like, you know that this is dangerous. Like, we appreciate your humor and your, like, Top Gun type of chat, but you're staying here, right? So, don't worry about friendlies. There aren't any up there. Meaning, that is enemy territory, hands down. Pick targets of opportunity on the way back if you have Mike left. So, targets of opportunity, like, hey, maybe they're going after an intentional target on the way there, but on the way back, they're looking for anything, you know, vehicles, weaponry systems, mortar tubes, freaking training camps, that type of stuff, and to pick out those targets if they have any bullets left. But don't make a second pass. Hey, if you're coming in hot or whatever, you need to drop your freaking and you miss it, like, whatever. You missed your opportunity to fire at the target of opportunity. If you get in trouble, go for the water, squawking Mayday. Right? Universal term, and we all know what Mayday means. It means going down. Maybe might have something to do with take it in the canyon down. I don't know. In the soil, and I'm not worried. Yeah, right, he wasn't going. A few minutes later, we were in position and ready to roll. With a hand signal to my wingman, we slowly moved our throttles forward to the stop, and we held the brakes hard. All right, hold on, because this is freaking awesome right here. Okay. A few minutes later, we were in position and ready to roll. With a hand signal to my wingman, we slowly moved our throttles forward to the stop, and we held the brakes hard. A quick scan of our 24 gauges on the instrument panel said my ship was willing and ready, so with a head nod, we rolled in tight formation. This is so awesome right here. After 3 more seconds and another nod, we each moved our throttles outboard to the afterburner latch. Then, with only a second's pause, the fun started as 16,000 pounds of thrust and fire exploded from our tailpipes through silver-plated titanium eyelids that quickly moved in and out, then settled on an optimum temperature that gave maximum power. At liftoff, the predictable whisper of the afterburner was soothing and reassuring, and we soon outran the sound. That is fucking awesome right there. That's saying, like, we got ready, right? We did our checks. We're getting ready to go. I freaking nodded to my buddy. He nodded back. We switched into the freaking outboard position. We heard the rumbling just... And then a second later, we're thrusted back while freaking 16,000 pounds of pressure is on us. Can't even freaking lift our heads up. And we're just hauling and just getting after it. And a second later, we outrun the sound. Meaning, the engine's still rumbling back there, but we're freaking way up there. Like, can you imagine that? Like, he's describing going so fast that he goes past the speed of the sound. But that's not the crazy part about it. So I'm going to keep reading on. My F-100 Delta was so solid and strong that being afraid wasn't easy. But with 4 750-pound bombs, 600 rounds of 20 Mike, high explosive incendiary bullets, and 550 gallons of fuel in 2 high-drag external tanks, we weren't exactly charging the sky. that is freaking insane. He's saying, yeah, we're going fast, but we weren't going as fast as what we could have because we're carrying all this other heavy stuff, right? 550 gallons of fuel. Each gallon is 8 pounds, right? So I don't know what that is, like 4,000 pounds just of fuel, okay? And then 600 rounds of 20 mic. A single 20 mic round is going to weigh a lot, right? 750 pounds of bombs, but there's 4 of them. So he's carrying, hold on, let's do this math real quick. Okay. Right here. Okay. 3.5 ounces. All right. Let's do this. Bear with me because this is going to be interesting. All right. So calculator. All right. So 750 times 4. 750 times 4. So he's got 3,000 pounds, 600 rounds of 20 mic. So we're going to add 3.5 times 600 equals, all right, shit. Hold on. Gosh darn it. Bear with me. All right, so 3.5 times 600 equals, okay, and then we need to divide that by 16 because there's 16 ounces in a pound. Okay, so 131, so we're carrying 3,131 pounds as of right now, okay, and we need to do 550, so 550 times 8 equals, all right, 4,400, all right, and I think that's what he did. So roughly 10,000 pounds. 10,000 pounds is what he's carrying. Maybe around eight or so. But what did I say the first time? 3,152 or something like that. So yeah, right around 8,000 pounds. And we weren't exactly charging the sky. But we still managed to freaking go past the speed of sound. That's freaking crazy. Alright, the climb out was smooth as usual, and the jungle through my windscreen was a deep green and covered with trees 300 foot high that seemed less and less important as we clawed for altitude. Alright, I'm going to go through and I'm going to read. I feel like I haven't been paying much attention to you guys in the chat. So, alright, Native Americans come to mind. What war on the Indians? Nobody learns from the past. The road we must travel. The road we must travel is a absolute, like a good way to sum this up. Deep. All right. Yes, the illusions that can pair with each other is the tough part. All right. Warrior statement makes me think about Donnie angry on his horse and Forrest stared off into the woods. All right, maybe. Yeah, he doesn't necessarily talk about how those thoughts have to come from war. It could just be any one or any type of thing that could brand his somebody's way of thinking, even though the thing might have only lasted for a minute or two. All right, made second pass in Laos, shot down. All right, again, the great analogy emphasizing cookies avoided. Squadrons expended 4 million rounds of 20 mic shells, 30 million pounds of bombs, and over 10 million pounds of napalm against their enemy. Good luck with that, Tiffany Robertson. If anybody wants a search partner, Tiffany Robertson would like one. So, all right, I'm gonna go just this. Oh shit! I feel like there's not really a good place to end. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit more and then I'm gonna wrap it up because I know nobody will freaking watch it. Well, maybe if they care they will, but The longer, the more I read, the more stuff I feel like talking about. So, all right, to the right was the beautiful South China Sea that I had known for many months. The green was different from the color of the trees, but just as beautiful. In a way that I can't explain, the sea seemed somehow foreboding and sinister, at times even diabolical. In a way that I can't explain, the sea seemed somehow foreboding and sinister and even diabolical. All right. Let's see what that, maybe because he knew that he couldn't cross it. He couldn't just go. He couldn't just leave. Foreboding. And I feel like that would be pretty close. Like, he knows he could fly home at any time. But if he crossed, you know, like, fearful, all right, foreboding, fearful apprehension, a feeling that something bad will happen, applying or seeming to imply that something bad is going to happen. Okay, so that's foreboding. Now let's look up the actual definition of sinister. Okay, sinister. Okay, giving the impression that something harmful or evil is happening or will happen, or of, on, or toward the left-hand side in a coat of arms from the bearer's point of view, i.e. the right as it is depicted. Okay, so sinister is the same as nigh. All right, or the archaic definition of nigh, and then diabolical. Son of a bitch, what did I just do? I hope I'm not boring you guys to death with this. But I guess these, alright, belonging to or so evil as to recall the devil. Alright. I'm not even going to talk about this part right there, but I'm going to take a mental note for myself. Alright, that answered something that I had. Alright, okay. Maybe it was because I knew the history of that water, its treachery. It had diluted the blood of so many sailors who had dared to test its beauty. Alright, fair enough. Maybe it was just a rough sea. At about 4,000 feet, I jiggled my rudder pedals, signaling my wingman to move out so he could relax and we could better keep the watch. Suddenly, something wonderfully innocent occurred. A small clearing appeared at 11 o'clock on my canopy and slowly worked its way under my left wing and disappeared behind. It was magical because a small waterfall in the center of a clearing dropped water so far that it turned to mist before it could spread on the rocks below. It must have been 100 feet or more. Large birds were circling around as if they also thought it was an amazing sight. How peaceful it all seemed. Alright, so obviously the waterfall is symbolic of something right here because it's brought up a lot in the chapter. Okay, now I think the large birds, as we all know for the most part, right, I'm not going to ruin it because in case anybody hasn't read it, I will eventually end up getting to it, but for the most part, a lot of us know what was at the waterfall. Okay, so maybe these large birds, you know, maybe he's being naive, like, oh, look, they're enjoying the beautiful scenery, but realistically, maybe these large birds were ravens or hawks or, you know, something. How peaceful it all seemed. Okay, I remember smiling and telling myself in an idle whim, if I get back from this mission, I'm going down there. It was a silly thing, and I knew it, but the seriousness of what lay ahead that day somehow turned the whim into a vow, a pledge of sorts. I felt I'd made a deal with that beautiful place. You bring me back, and I'll come down there and personally thank you. The deal was struck. I trusted it, and it trusted me. It was our secret alone. So, we have the waterfall. We have symbolism of the waterfall. We have mentioning of a secret, okay? And we have a vow or a pledge, right? kind of like, as I have gone alone in there and with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret where, and hint of riches new and whole. He's using the waterfall to symbolize a pledge or a vow that was made to keep a secret. All right. All of our planes returned from that mission. I'm not saying that it was related to the treasure, but he's using that to symbolize it, right? All of our planes returned from that mission, and we kept going back. On each successive climb out, before the clearing could disappear beneath my wing, I winked and renewed the vow, and kept returning. All right, so he constantly makes the secret. Here, come grab it. Right there? Is that what you're looking for?
What?
Hold on.
Yes. Look. Does Mom need it?
I don't know. You're the... No. I'm not sure. What? Can we talk in a minute? Can we talk in a minute? Sorry. Can we talk in a minute?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
We can talk when you're done.
Okay. Promise I'm not an asshole. She just... Nothing needs to be said until mom and dad are doing something, and now it's all got to be said. Okay, I'm going to try to finish up here. All of our planes returned from that mission. We kept going back on each successive climb out. Before the clearing could disappear beneath my wing, I winked and renewed the vow, and I kept returning. On one mission in North Vietnam, so he keeps making the same vow, the same promise, and considers it his secret. It's special. He considers it special, and he keeps it, and it's secret to him. On one mission in North Vietnam, after dropping bombs and turning for home, I let down to 1,000 feet looking for targets of opportunity, maybe army trucks or munition storage area. My wingman was 1,000 feet on my right and back at 30 degrees. At 12 miles a minute, the geography was changing fast, and my brain was thinking and planning minutes ahead. 12 miles a minute. It's insane. But he can't even, everything's changing so fast, he can't even pay attention to what's going on because he's always looking minutes ahead. He can't see the present because he's always looking towards the future, which you probably should be able to do as a pilot, right? Suddenly, on the left, there appeared a large group of people bunched together, maybe 1,000 or more. I wasn't ready for what was about to happen. Although my guns were hot, I knew I wasn't going to shoot because I first had to determine if it was a legitimate target. I think this is a very good spot for me to stop. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and stop right there. I've been going on for an hour and 20 minutes. I know only about an hour of that was reading a war for me or whatever, and realistically probably only like 20 minutes of that was actually reading the book, and the rest were my own thoughts. So I'm going to go back and read some of the comments. If you guys have anything for me to that you want to mention or something by the time I get done reading this. But if not, I'm probably going to shut it down and maybe go out and do some metal detecting today. Single seat fighter bomber, avionics, larger wing and tail fin, landing flaps. Okay. Okay, step 1, I need to move to New Mexico. Rodney Greenway, NWFM in book, and at the Don Saunders. I'm not sure what you're saying, Mary. Yeah, I don't... Yeah, I'm not sure what you're getting at with that one. $10 billion blazes could be a bird. What else? There are 10 billion of bird, aka plane insinuation. Okay, I understand that. I'm assuming that you're talking about my comment about me not being an asshole. Of course I have a solve. In New Mexico, I have about 30 solves. I could spend a week near Touch Me Not Mountain alone. Did not shoot birds. Did not shot birds. Lewis and Clark, folly decision. Alright. Okay, I could see spiders or birds being a thing that bugs not so much. R, how does this war chapter relate to the psychology of the chess? Oh, it relates. I think it relates. But with that being said, Mary was mentioning the earlier than 2020 writing in my warfare. Oh, okay, yeah, I got you. I know what you're talking about in the I don't think it was on the Bozeman Chronicle, but I did find it. I found a lot of Forrest Fenn stuff out on the internet. I downloaded a lot of links and old archives and documents, and I found a lot of stuff about Fenn for sure. Okay, so I think, me personally, I really think that this chapter is important, and with that being said, I'm also holding stuff back for myself, and I don't think anybody can fault me for that. I was reading it the other night, and like shit really started popping off in my head, and I think that that's why Fenn says go back and read the book and look for anything that stands out, and he's telling us like there is some very important stuff in that book that's going to help you freaking figure this out. I don't necessarily think that the poem is geographical locations, but I think between the poem and the book, the 9 clues in the poem help us figure out those geographical locations. But if you're just looking for where warm waters halt and take it in the canyon down, I don't think you're going to have much luck with that. But again, that's my opinion. And same thing, if you're looking for the home of Brown, I don't think that that's how it's going to work. I also believe, I'm not going to say it, I think I figured out the one clue that anybody could figure out but hasn't yet. And I think I have a pretty good idea on how Fenn hid his treasure. Not where he hid his treasure, but how he hid his treasure. Okay. Alright, maybe he vowed to the universe that if he got healed from his cancer, he could give up his treasure to the universe. His chest, give back. Yeah, sure, that seems pretty legit. But, yeah, so a couple people, they ask me, like, why do you make these videos, or why give your thoughts away? Even my wife, she asks me that type of stuff. And I just do it because, like, one, I'm recording my own thoughts. I might say something in a video that when I'm watching it later on, it's gonna spark an idea in my mind. I don't necessarily know that I'm helping anybody. You have to understand that even though I make videos, I kind of just like to talk about like possibilities and brainstorm, right? And kind of just use critical thinking. But also within my videos, I'm holding stuff back for myself. As dick as that sounds for me to say it, it's true, right? And when people, I made the video about when I did the affair video. Somebody got on there like, how does this help us find the chest? Well, fucking asshole, like it doesn't. It might not, right? But that's up to the people to. I shouldn't say asshole. That was a dick thing to say. But some of this might not help at all. But Fenn says like if it wasn't in his books, or not something that he had said, I don't even think he said if it's not something that I've said. He says if it's in the books, then you should probably pay attention to it, right? Like don't believe anything else besides what's in there, right? And I don't know who said it up here. So how does this war chapter? Oh, I wasn't speaking to you, by the way, when I said that. It was a different one. So John Pelota says, so how does this war chapter relate to the psychology of the chase? And I wasn't able to get into it. It is a super long chapter. I don't even think we're close, right? But there is some very, very significant stuff in there. And not only in there, but also within the whole book. There's some very significant stuff that me personally will help you figure out where he's gone alone into, what his treasures are, where he can keep a secret, what Warm Waters Halt is, or where Warm Waters Halt. That type of stuff. I really do think that it's in there, and I think it's like it's there, like smacking you in the face once you see it. But it's not just locations on a map, in my opinion. Okay, and then, and then going on to, why I do this, why I put the thoughts out there, how does this relate, how does that relate, and then, like, all the emails that I get, I get tons of emails, not tons, like, I'm not fucking balling in emails or anything, but I get quite a few emails saying, like, hey, we should partner up, or hey, I want you to join me, and so on and so forth. All right, I feel like I need to get it out there onto a video, right? I'm always willing to listen to what somebody has to say, okay? And I would never tell anybody what has been said to me in an email. Like, that's confidential between you and me. However, whatever you decide to divulge to me in an email, that's up to you, right? But so the people that have asked me, to join them up to be their partner, I'm like, I'm not making any promises, but like, I will listen to what you have to say, and if you can convince me, like, if you can make me be like, holy shit, then yeah, maybe then we can talk. But there's no way that I would agree to be somebody's search partner prior to hearing a solution. And I understand, like, how that looks, but you also have to understand, like, the amount of people that email me and are looking for a partner. If I said yes to those guys without even, hearing what their thoughts were, or without them, like, hinting towards anything, if I said yes to all these people, right, and then if I took off and I found the chest, all these people would have electronic documents showing where I had promised to be their search partner. Even though I didn't use anything of theirs and I just used mine, they still have this thing like, hey, but wait, you said that you'd be my search partner, so that automatically entitles me to a certain percentage, even though I did nothing to help, and even though you only use stuff that you figured out on your own. So that's why I say that, right? And the other thing that I want to address is, and it kind of goes right into the middle of my, like, stop acting like you know what you're talking about type video, right? And all these emails, or these videos like, I know where the treasure is, I just need a search partner, or whatever. If you knew where the treasure was, you would not look for a search partner. Hands up, if I knew where the treasure was, there's no way I would hire more help. There's no way I would be like, man, I would really like a partner so I could split half of this with. No freaking way, right? In my opinion, like, probably the best time to start a partnership would be when both people are starting out the chase, and they both do equal amounts to contribute, right? And if it just so happens to like, hey, I want to, at some point in time during my chase, I might want to go this way and you might want to go this way. Okay, put that in your contract. Be like, hey, if I find the treasure using nothing to do with what we've talked about, then it's mine. If you do the same thing with nothing that I've talked about, then it's yours. If we go in it all together and we're 50-50, then we're going to split it 50-50. But you wouldn't be emailing people about becoming search partners if you knew where the treasure was. And people shouldn't be agreeing to that. People shouldn't be agreeing to take you on as a search partner without some sort of information as to why you're confident about where it's at. Because if that person did agree to it, and if that person went and found the treasure, then the person that questioned the possibility of partnering up now has documentation saying that you agreed to be their partner. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I didn't mean to go off on a rant about it, but so I just wanted to put that out there in case, you know, other people. I'm always willing to listen, and I'll always freaking keep your stuff in the strictest confidence. And I'm not out to screw over anybody. I won't be like, oh sweet, you know, thanks for the hint, and then freaking take off. I'm not that kind of person. If it sparks something in my mind, I'm like, oh shit, then I would give you the courtesy of letting you know, like, dude, you just triggered something in my mind. This is what I'm thinking. Like, I'm gonna use this, and if I go find something that had something to do with like your thoughts or whatever, like, I'll hook you up. But at the same time, like, to put your solves on the internet, to send your solves in an email, to do anything like that, that's really like, that's on you, and it might not be the best decision, right? That's like telling somebody a product idea before you have a patent out. It's not good. So yeah. So just in case anybody emails me and asks me again, just to understand where I'm coming from, and I'm like, yeah, like, I can't do that unless you tell me. But then hopefully you as a person, if you're getting asked to partner up, or you're thinking about partnering up with somebody, you know, maybe you'll think about what I had just said and realize that, hey, you will owe these people something. Even if you had nothing to do with the other, you're going to, if there was a promise made somewhere, you are going to owe them something. And then also to just, you know, touch on the why I do it. Like, it's not even about the treasure anymore. Like, as awesome as it would be, I just want to frickin' solve this thing. Like, I want to figure it out. That's what it's all about for me now. Like, it's fun. I like making this. It's not that much fun because it pisses me off on a daily basis. Like, can't even get good sleep because that's all I think about is the frickin' poem. But it has me intrigued enough to keep going. And that's why I do this. So, anybody have anything else for me before I head out? Maybe if we can hear the word that is key enough times, it'll click in our brains. Yeah. I only talk on the phone or TeamSpeak with other hunters. So, what did you guys think of this so far, though? Is everybody enjoying it? Do I need to, like, speed things up a little bit? Do I need to keep the sidebar out? Keep in mind, like, the first 25 minutes of this video was me reading that article. So I think, you know, when I get back to it and I start actually, you know, talking through it and not, you know, pulling off random freaking side conversations and stuff, I think it'll get going a lot better. And if you guys have the book, I really think that you should go back through it and you should read A War for Me and really dive into it and understand what's being said. But yeah, other than that, thanks for watching. If you happen to make it the hour and 35 minutes into this but aren't on the live stream, good job making it all the way through. And then if any of you guys have any emails, go ahead and write me at fentreasurethoughts@gmail.com. If you have any comments, please let me know below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe and enable notification. My plan is to go ahead and continue this tomorrow. Not making any promises, but hopefully part 2 will come out tomorrow. But other than that, have a good night, you guys, or a good day, I guess, and happy hunting.